I am Matthew Pokopepe, the Minister responsible for energy, the Minister responsible for Yidum SCC, and the Minister responsible for Yidum INE. Thank you. It really starts from the generator, but the generator should have its fuel. And since generators don't produce the fuel themselves, they'll have to buy the fuel from somebody. So that person brings the fuel to you, you use the fuel to generate the electricity, you need to transmit the electricity from your generator to the consumer. There are agencies or service agencies that will transmit it to the big bulk supply points, like the transmitters, because they generate at very high voltages in transmission. To send enough power to, say, a region, you need to transmit at high voltages, which is normally in Ghana here, 161,000 volts. We have to think about our normal electricity in our home that we are all scared of is 240 volts. But transmitting from the generator to the distributor goes through wires that will concentrate it to up to 161,000. Some do have 330, which we are trying to modify, change our transmission network in the country. But yes, some do go 400 and 500,000 volts to transmit. The more higher you can transmit, the more efficient that transmission is. Okay, so when you get from the transmitting point of view, you have to bring the voltages down to be able to distribute. So you bring it to the ECG substation, it gets to about 40, 50, 60 kilowatts, and then you move it from the station through 11 kilowatt, probably voltage lines, distribution lines, and you see there's some small transformers on poles around people's houses. It brings it further down before what you get into your house is at 200 volts. The first issue is the fuel. The second issue is with generation. The third issue is with transmission. The fourth issue is with distribution. And the fifth issue is with the consumers. We are sometimes used to consuming by not paying, but somebody always has to pay. In this country, I've suffered intermittent electricity outages, a period between 5 and 7 years. There's most times either a drought or shortage of generation. It's been cyclical for us. Beginning 2012, we started noticing power shortages. But by the time we got to 2013, because of the huge debts that had accumulated after the 2012 election, government found it difficult paying for fuel for generators. And consider that our electricity usage is increasing about between 5 and 7%. More people were using electricity, but we couldn't generate enough. So a combination of lack of money to pay the fuel suppliers and a generational deficit led to what we would term doomsaw. Doomsaw in the sense that it was nationwide. The power outage that came, unlike the one we have just seen by ECG, it was for the whole country. It started with 12-hour on, 12-hour off, and it got to 36-hour off, 12-hour on. So it got increasingly worse. And that is what we, in the period between 2013 and 2017, January, we suffered doomsaw for that 4-year period. Currently, we generate mainly from Kosovo and thermal producers. Thermal producers are either from VRA itself, Kosovo belongs to VRA, from VRA itself or from other independent power producers like Car Power, Sen Power, Senet, Asodia, Sogli. They all produce what we generate to supply through the transmission system. We have Bui Power too that came on and was supplying a bit. But generally, with the hydro, is very, very cheap if you get the water. But the hydro load that we have in the country, which is about 1,400, 1,500, is not enough for us. So that's why we have the generators. And as soon as you go to the thermal generators, somebody has to pay for the fuel. So even though by the time we got to early 2012, we had enough generators, the ability was the ability to pay the generators to generate. And then, because we are increasing our usage, we outstripped the ability of the generators to supply. And so we had to then quickly, because the doomsday was as it speak in that period, we definitely had to sign on more generators. So some generators came with, on ships, some came with the Mary modular form to come and assemble like a Mary. Car power was on ship. AXA came quickly with this system, with these modules to come and deploy. So some were quick to deploy, but all depended upon your ability to pay them. Most of the generators, thermal generators at that time, were either reliant on RFO, HFO, LCO, or diesel, which is even more expensive fuels. So they were using very expensive fuels in generation, which means the cost of generation was higher than if you have used something like gas, or if you have used a supplemental generation point like solar to supplement what you are doing. So gas is the cheapest probably that we can find apart from the hydro, but we didn't have that. We have had to convert most of the plants to either dual fuel before we did that. Initially, some of them that could use gas, there was no gas available. Now our gas came on stream and we have lots of gas. So we've converted most of our generators, thermal generators, to gas-fired thermal plants. Under President Kufuor, we had lights out or doomsday. And the solution at that time that the government at that time did was to buy the generating sets, buy the fuel, and deal with the problem. So there was no cost build-up for either ECG or VRE or anybody, because government bought the generating plants. Government bought the fuel on emergency basis to light the country or to power the country. In the 2012-2016 doomsday, what government decided to do, because it didn't have money anyway, if it had money it would have paid for the fuel, was to sign power purchase agreements with various people or entities that could come and put up generation plants and give us electricity. The people realizing that we were in desperate need gave us draconian terms that we call take or pay. So if he is generating 400 megawatts, whether you buy it or you don't, you're going to pay. As far as he has installed in your country, every time you owe him 400 megawatts equivalent of electricity. What made it inimical was that they used government guarantees. So if you say you won't pay, they will call on your guarantee. And that has been the albatross on our neck for the last 8 years. A government that was desperate for money, a government that had run to IMF because it was bankrupt. This same government was facing mountain debts or mountain bills as far as generation capacity was. So they couldn't have solved the doomsday problem because there was no money anywhere. Even workers were not being allowed to be employed, teachers and nurses and everybody, because that was part of the IMF conditions. So we came into 2017, we quickly exited the IMF. We used central government money because your priority is what you decide as a government. We used central government money in paying down the rapidly accumulating debts as a result of the take or pay, to continue to have lights on. Once we started paying and we showed the goodwill of paying, the generators continued to generate, and then government continued to pay as and when it makes some money available. The first thing the government did at that time was to find money and pay down the accumulated debts that were owing the generators. Then the second step the government took, the power purchase agreements that had been signed were too many, and we had more generators than we consumed. Even as of now, we have an installed capacity of 5,100, and our maximum peak load has hovered around 3,100 to 3,200. So there's built-in capacity, there's resilience there. What was happening was that if whether we took the power and consumed or not, we pay. And that was what was rapidly accumulating then. So government looked at the PPAs that had been signed and said, hey, hold on, we don't have money now. For some of you, can you defer your start date to later date? So we have a few IPPs, about between 6 and 8, that were deferred. If those IPPs or generators had not come on board, it would have even made our debt situation worse. So there was a potential to have even a worse situation than what we are in now. But government deferred that through negotiations. For those power producers that were also producing, who were giving us very high rates because of, one, the fuel that we were using, and two, because we were desperate, so they charged us higher. Government has been renegotiating with them in a bid to bring down. We have achieved one. We've converted almost all our generators to gas, which brought substantial savings. And we want to even go further. The debts were accumulating. ECG, that is at the distribution end, could not collect enough money to pay those. In fact, if ECG even collected 100% of all the energy that it has been provided for it, what it collected didn't amount to paying all the debts, because there was a huge difference. So government quickly rolled out the HE bond, energy sector recovery levies and energy levies on petrol, on top of petroleum, and went to the bond market to raise some money to pay even further the debt down. So the generators and the fuel producers became a bit more comfortable there. They saw that government was striving to pay, so they continued to generate. But the ECG collection itself was very low. ECG collects only about 55 to 60% of the amount of money it's supposed to collect for the energy that has been supplied to them, or they have supplied to their customers. So it was low, so it couldn't pay off. So government stepped in with the HE bond to reduce the total debts hanging over the energy sector. The HE bond too was not enough. So government went in further to establish a gas clearing house. That, okay, let me also find money and pay those who are bringing fuel, which is gas, which is mainly ENI and other players. But we found out that that contract too was take or pay. So whether we took the ENI gas or not, we paid that amount of money. So what government is doing as part of the negotiation is to renegotiate with ENI to bring the gas price also down, which will then flow through and serve even customers. All those renegotiations are going on, but still your debts that are accumulating must be paid. So government recently went to Parliament and said, hey, the debt is all our debt. Whether it is a hangover debt, it's a legacy debt, it's a lifestyle debt, or whatever it is, it's a debt that Ghanaians must pay. We don't print currency, so me and you should pay. So government comes in with a Delta Fund to also bear down the cost, that we raise the revenue to pay the cost. But I have to let people know that all these levies and taxes we impose through petroleum products, at every time T, when that burden is eased or is lifted, governments do go back to Parliament to cancel some. So you realize that when we came in 2007, we cancelled a lot of these levies and taxes that are imposed on petroleum, because the way we found it as nuisance taxes. Our situation at that time didn't call for those taxes. So I believe that Ghanaians should understand and be patient and stay with the government, because the government has managed the till very, very well. And if it's not necessary, this government will be the last to impose a tax. This tax that has been imposed, that is going to affect our payments in down the sector, is our ability to put the electricity on, to power the industry for me, for you to get work to do, and also for us to live a normal life. So I believe that government, if it's not necessary, if it gets to the time that our debts are paid down, things have eased, may remove some of these taxes. The government, realizing what it came to inherit, established this Energy Sector Recovery Task Force, supported by World Bank and some donor partners, to really think through these issues. And some of the findings are what we have discussed. You pay too high for your gas, whereas Ivory Coast pays $5 for the gas. Ghana, we pay over $9 if it's ENI. You pay high prices for your gas. You pay high prices for your electricity compared to other African countries because the inherent deficiencies of nearly 30% unaccountable electricity cost through technical commercial losses is huge. So there's an inherent inefficiency in our system that we have to deal with technically through improving the transmission lines. The transmission lines we improve would also reduce the transmission losses, which are technical losses down the line. So we'll begin to see now the transmission losses are equivalent around 10% down here, 9 to 10%, where international benchmarks is less than 4%. But it is made worse if we transmit on a lower strength wires, 161. So you have to go higher than 161, which is 330. It's more efficient. And if you transmit on long distances, you get to my city, Kumasi, and then you see, even though the electricity is going off and on, when you look at the light, it's like a dim light. We are not able to maintain voltages and stability because we transmit over 161 for a very long stretch. And it's already congested. So from Kumasi, Ashanti, all the way to north, the bottleneck is Kumasi, everybody will tell you. Until eventually we get generators in the middle belt, northern belt, we're going to have problems with fluctuations and voltages. We intend moving Ameri power plant to Kumasi. That will fix the voltage situation and the stability of the transmission lines and the transmissions in the Ashanti, not only Ashanti, and the northern part of the country. What was helping was Bui, which was counterbalancing. Bui, because of drought or because water has not flowed, because our investigation tells us that the Burkina Bees have put a dam somewhere higher up, Bui, to all intents and purposes, is probably doing 90 megawatts. Instead of 400. And even the 90 megawatts is doing it between peak hours, between the hours of 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. In fact, there's a danger because we are lower than the lower limit of the dam. The water level is lower than the lower limit. So our ability to use B is severely being constrained daily by even drafting more water. So we have to look at it. So we is not doing the counterbalancing for us. So the middle part of the country, the northern part of the country, is suffering severe voltage issues and stability issues. There are three things we could do, but ultimately is to put a generator aside. Second thing, we were moving from 161 kVA transmission lines at 161,000. Always remember that your house is 240. We are moving from 161 to 330. We've built from the west or south to Kumasi. We built from Kintampo to Bolgatanga. Kumasi to Kintampo. We hope that by the third quarter of this year, it will be done. So when we move Aberi, when we bypass Kumasi with a huge transmission line, then the stability and the voltages become better in Kumasi. Ufi was socket back up in the border. And you walk to extension board. Extension board, AME and Sapen also. What the back o TV. Beboa. What the back o iron. Beboa. What the back o fridge. Beboa. And you go to washing machine, what the best say. And now say extension board, while loaded the full, so who pay no and she no and doom no. We want to fear because electricity at the back they say no my so. It is only why I the firm. Now just so was a yes. It go full FP extension wires, extension board. Obati obi onim can say oh extension board dey free China nya papa. What load do what dey 24/7. And na dey na bed na metal na dey plastic na shi and also film na shi. Transmission line 1950 to 1960, the year of Ghana, 161 kV. 1960, the whole of Ghana's population, maybe 5-6 million. They say Ghana population is 30 million. We have basic amenities of life, also a bio supply. It's investment is huge. It's a shiny in our pepe. It's shiny in our pepe. And no thing that I say, Musha, can you dum kakra? Because I say, and yet, dum so I Ghana high you 2012 go see 2016. And yes, I do so be now be. We you dum a CC. You dum a ye. You dum a CC. And you dum a ye. It's up this some trophy for here. Great cook. On headquarters our tema. Ye nya ni kuhui. Nipa ma. A say wire. I know we were at 330 kV and 161,000 volts. Nipa ma senso. Seeing huma. Se o senso no see huma no. Onia. Me no nim se ontimi nsoka de anfansi so ensan koye. It was a doom cadet baby, more obitimi yes edgman, no, and only doom see that make. The transmission problem is a congestion problem because of our population. And our inability to maintain or service or improve the network for years. That needed work is going. Government is fixing the problem. Going forward, our new generators will be take and pay. I don't know of any other business model where you tell me that I can produce 1,000 bottles of Coca-Cola or 1,000 bottles of Ideal milk. And when I produce that 1,000 milks, whether you like it or not, whether you drink it or not, you pay me anyway. Because we are in desperate times, we had to take the take or pay. But we are not in desperate times. So I've told the generators or those who are interested in generating on our behalf that going forward, it will be take and pay. Your business model should not rely on government giving you the guarantee. You have to take that risk. The guarantee we can give you is the payment guarantee of our take. Not a compulsory payment. I must commend Sonny Asogli. Even though his contract is take or pay, he only takes. He doesn't take the excess capacity. He saved the government of Ghana over $250 million. So even if when others were taking advantage of their contract, he said, I can't kill the hen that lays the golden egg. So going forward, what we're going to do is that, yes, we encourage generators. Yes, we'll give them the climate, the enabling environment to work. But it's going to be take and pay. One, take and pay. No government guarantees or PCOAs or partial risk guarantees. No, take and pay. Government will put, or ECG will raise an LC for you that when it takes and it doesn't pay, call on the LC. That is a guarantee. That is a guarantee that will be available to everybody. We are also moving to a maximum energy charge so that this anomaly of somebody saying, my own is 36 pesos, my own is 2 cedis, my own is 1 cedi, doesn't exist. So those will be coming in from, say, 2024. That's what they're doing. By the 2024, most of the generators who are doing take or pay, their time will be up. And we will then be able to, they will then be able to join the take and pay and stay, or their business decision, their contractual obligations are up. So that is where we are going. Ghana is one of the few countries where the more you consume, the more you pay. That model is also for scarcity times. Not when we have even more generation and people are willing to consume. So, example, what is happening in the PRC now in their tariff calculation? They say that if you consume, example, 0 to 100, every 1 unit is 1 cedi. 101 to 200, every unit is 2 cedis. 201 to 300, every unit is 3 cedis. What's the point? If me and you drive a 4-wheel drive, I drive a Tico. What are we going to say at the fuel dump to buy fuel? When my fuel engine tank is full, it takes 10 liters. If a liter is 1 cedi, I'll pay 10 cedis and go away. If yours take 100 liters, they won't say after 10 cedis, 11 to 20, 2 cedis, 21 to 30, 3 cedis. That is what the electricity is. So if you have a small-sized industry, like a hotel, you pay 2 cedis over 2 cedis per kilowatt. It is so unfair, very, very aggressive. So we discussing with PRC, our stakeholders, that they should start merging, if nothing, the upper bands. It is going to simulate or stimulate industry. And don't remember, they employ people. The service industries employ a lot of people. So when you kill them through electricity tariffs, you are destroying your jobs. So those who say fix it, they should join government in ensuring that PRC tariffs is also made fair. I think it's a phrase that has caught up because that's what government is doing. It's like telling me what I'm doing. I want somebody to come and tell me that we are not fixing the energy issues. I'm prepared to stand to a debate anywhere and say, for the work that we are doing, that is what an expectant, level-minded, objective citizen should require of his government. I'm having transmission charges. What are you doing? And can you account to me? And I'll say, yes, this is what I'm doing, and I can account to you. Government will continue to fix the problem of Ghanaians. And I think that my government will do it the best.